So welcome to the university. My name is Dr. Carlo Pedrioli. I'm a lecturer here in law at the university, and I'm joined by Dr. Richard Lang, who is another academic colleague with law. And would everyone who will be speaking at some point like to introduce him or herself?
My name is Jean-Dre. I am a student at Liverpool Hope University, and I am also a student ambassador. So I am here to answer any questions about student life.
The format for today then will be relatively straightforward. Normally we're a little more interactive, but because of the pandemic, we're restricted with our format for today. I'm going to go ahead and make a brief presentation about the department, and then we will have the opportunity to do questions and answers. Normally we would blend them, it just flows better, but with the Zoom technology, it gets a little bit confusing. So if you have a question, you will get it answered, but we would request that you just hold it until the end. So let's go ahead and get started then. And we'll just have a moment here where we have to get the technology to do what it promises to do. So we hope now that you are able to see the presentation aids. Let's see here. Okay. Just getting these set up here. There we go. Okay. This is what the university looks like on one of these sunny days we've had this spring. And we'll move in to speak a little bit about the program that we offer. We offer both the BA, that is Bachelor of Arts, and the LLB, that would be Bachelor of Laws programs here at the university. What you see here are the classes that all students would be taking, whether they're in the BA or the LLB. Now, the LLB is all law. The BA is half law and half another subject. So the other subject could be business, it could be politics, literature, it could be chemistry, it could be almost whatever you may be interested in. So all law students, whether they're half law or 100% law, have certain prescribed classes, and that will take place, that format will take place throughout the 3 different years. For example, first year, if you join us next year, you will have criminal law, public law, and contract law. Now, my favorite class first year is public law. Why? Because I teach the class. So it is a good class. That's a class where we talk about the Constitution in the United Kingdom, about human rights, about the relationship between the United Kingdom's Constitution, at least historically now as we're going through change, and the various European Union structures. Criminal law is just what you think it would be. It's about crime. And contract law, while it may sound a little bit distant and unfamiliar, is something that in a way you actually would be quite familiar with, because every time you go to Tesco or Asda or Aldi or anywhere else to buy groceries, which most of us do at some point in time, you are entering into a contract. So we talk in contracts about some of the legal rules that govern these kinds of business transactions. That's first year. Second year, we have European Union law. And Dr. Lang, would you like to say just a very brief word about EU law, as you are our new EU law specialist?
Thank you, Carlo. Yes, I teach EU law. Very topical at the moment. You may think we're getting rid of it, but we're not. We're getting more of it. On the 31st of December, all of the existing EU law will be coming into British law, so it will be more relevant than ever, especially if you're going to go into practice of law 4 or 5 years from now. I'm sure a lot of it will still be there. They'll repeal some of it, they'll amend some of it, but there's thousands of pieces of it, and I'm sure a lot of it will still be there and being used when you're up and running in practice. So it'll be my pleasure to explain that to you and help you interpret it and interpret the case law. And you'll have clients in any event who will still be trading with the EU and who will still be wanting to work there or migrate there or whatever. So I will be happy to take you through all of that when the time comes.
And that's second year, first term, second year, is that correct? Right. So also second year, we have land law, which is what you'd expect. It's law about land, so properties, real properties. Business law, we tend to focus on company law in that class. And then third year, and this is getting a little bit down the road, but it's good to have a preview of coming attractions. Tort law will be about things like car accidents. The main tort that is studied is negligence, which is just legal carelessness. Equity and trusts will focus on trusts, matters later on in life often. And then the equity system, which has at least historically run parallel to the legal system, but then there's a merger at some point. And finally, all students at the university, and this is one of the distinguishing points about our institution, all third years do write a dissertation of 8,000 to 9,000 words. I think we'll have a little bit more to say on that later. That is a topic of law that is your choice. So these classes then are the classes that are common to everyone, all BA and LLB students. So the BA students will do these classes, and then they go and they also have the other program. The LLB students have additional courses. Remember, they're doing all law, and it's broken down over the 3 years. These are some of the additional things you do if you choose to do the Bachelor of Laws program. First year, legal praxis or legal practice is the application of legal skills to certain situations, mediation, negotiation, those kinds of things. Legal theory gives you a little bit of an idea of the bigger picture of law. For example, is law something that is just given through the government? Is law something that has an eternal purpose? It's an abstract way of looking at law. Criminal process deals with many of the issues related to the criminal law, but it looks at more the packaging of criminal litigation rather than the substance. So that's first year if you're on the LLB. Second year, we have something called Justice, Life, and Law, which is, it sounds a little mysterious, and it is. We fill it up with different things, so we adapt depending on the availability of different colleagues. Equality and discrimination law and employment law go together. Employment law would be the rules for the workplace, what employers cannot do, what they can do, those kinds of things. Discrimination features legal violations based on race, sex, sexual orientation, marital status, those kinds of things. So really practical teaching goes on in second year as well. What happens third year for the LLBs? Well, we get to do one of my favorite options, that is comparative public law. So it's not just studying the British Constitution. We look at bits and pieces of different constitutions around the world, including those in France, Germany, Italy, the United States, China. We look out so that we can have a better understanding of ourselves when we look in. Another great class, third year, media law. Dr. Suri, another colleague, teaches that. That involves the regulation of communications. EU competition law. Dr. Lang, would you like to say a brief word about this one, as this was something that you have planned to teach?
Yes. Well, if you have enjoyed, as I'm sure you will have done, your second year class in EU law, you can continue because I'm offering EU competition law in third year, and I'll be delighted to welcome you back. So what's that all about? Well, it's back to Tesco's and Asda. You've all got your loyalty cards, haven't you? Swiping your loyalty cards. Well, this is the idea that the business is trying to get you to come back. But is that fair? Perhaps you should have a choice as a consumer to go somewhere else. So they're trying to tie you in to going to them. And that is legal, but it's on the very edge, because if they give too much loyalty rebate, they are denying your choice to go wherever you like, and that's what competition law is about. It's to try and make sure that the marketplace is open and that no individual business can monopolize. So it's quite an interesting subject from that point of view. Ben and Jerry's and their refrigerated lorries come into it, and all kinds of ways that businesses have innovated, which we ought to reward as a society, but in innovating, sometimes they also take over and stop competitors from getting a foothold. So it's a funny kind of law. It's we don't want too much of it, otherwise nobody's free to conduct their business. But we don't want none of it, otherwise we'll just end up with one big monopolist and no choice.
So EU competition law is another option, just like the law of succession, which is an additional class with final matters in life, very practical. We all are born, we all live, and we all die. Law has something to say about all these different areas in life, stages in life. What you would do is you'd pick two options from these four options, and then you would have a dissertation as well. So there's more choice third year, you get to specialize a little bit more. All right, so these are the additional courses on the LLB. How do we teach? There are a few particulars here. We have a variety of class formats. We do some traditional lecturing, as most universities do. That's fine. We try and get some information out to supplement readings. We do seminars where we oftentimes focus on particular problems from the material. Students may work in groups, they may work individually, etc. And we make sure that we have a tutorial, the different ways that different departments do these. The university believes it's important to have an intimate first year experience, including in law. So you're in a group that is supposed to be no more than 10 students. You meet weekly with the same lecturer during the entire year. It helps you get into the university system. And it also teaches you, and this is important, some things about the methods of law. So legal research, writing, some things about studying at university. We do some tutorials second year as well. I think it's fair to say the first year tutorials have particular significance because they are new to because you would be new to the university at that point in time. So lectures and seminars continue. The dissertation is there in year 3. Assessments, everyone's favorite topic at university. Students love assessments and lecturers love to mark assessments. We have a variety of assessments. Some universities are a little bit overly focused on exams. We do have exams, but we balance them out. Now, disclaimer here, we're in the process of doing a little bit of tweaking. So what you see here will give you an idea of coming attractions, but just an idea. Some of the details may be changed. Traditionally, first year, we made sure there's an essay, there's a portfolio, an exam. An exam is an exam. An essay is a take-home writing project, and a portfolio has a variety of smaller assignments, such as maybe an essay, such as a short quiz, something else of that nature. And as you can see, we have various different arrangements for these assessment methods over the years. And you'll note the dissertation keeps showing up in year 3. It's every student's favorite project. Now, how do we study law here at the university? We tend to think of law as a field of human social organization. We don't tend to think of it as something in a vacuum. The classical approach to law tends to be more focused on rules in a vacuum. Now, law, of course, does have rules, but it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's influenced by economics, by politics, particularly constitutional law, which, as I mentioned, I teach. Philosophy is behind the different human rights. For example, freedom of expression. Why should we listen to things in society that we don't like? Communication is behind all of this. Lawyers don't function without communication, or psychology for that matter. So when we study law, what sorts of skills do we pick up? If we're reading a legal decision by a justice of the UK Supreme Court, we want to see how that legal mind is thinking. How does she structure the argument? What does she do with the facts? How does she cite precedent? And so when we go through and do that, we interpret the text, whether it's a statute, a case, etc. We are interpreting a text. We analyze, we discuss. And then in class, when things really are going well, we have a good argument about some of the controversies of law. So this is something that's contextualized. This is something that is a more living, dynamic process when all parties to the transaction are performing up to their levels of ability. So what do you do afterwards when you pick up some of these skills? Well, some of this is intellectual development. Some of it is preparation for the world of work. So many employers today are interested in the way that employees can handle information. How do they analyze data? What sort of an argument can be made? Can we deal with bigger legal issues? Those kinds of things. So whether someone graduates with a BA or an LLB, goes into law practice, doesn't go into law practice, the skills are definitely useful in the workplace and in life. And of course, the LLB, which we have called traditionally the qualifying law degree, is the first official step towards becoming a solicitor or a barrister. And there'll be some practical training thereafter, and things go from there. Now, we must note that the process for entry into the professions is in the process of changing, and we'd be happy to talk about that a little bit more during Q&A, that there'll be some changes coming forward in the next year or so. All right, so who are we? You've already met me. I'm Carlo Pedrioli, and you've already met Richard Lang, my colleague. Other colleagues are here. I mentioned Dr. Suri, Dr. Lawrence Suri. He is our new criminal law expert. Dr. Onyeka Okongwu is our expert in employment law and discrimination. And Ian Johnson, who's a retired barrister, teaches legal practice. Remember, that's the class with the application of the skills in particular mock situations, as well as some other classes. We are supposed to be hiring a new colleague for next year, so we hope we can promise a mystery colleague. What else might you be doing besides going to class? As you can see, at least on a nice day, the university does have a pleasant campus, so students can enjoy that. One of the things off campus that we do, and this was started this year in criminal law, is to take a trip to the magistrate court and to the Crown Court. Students have the opportunity to see law come to life. It's one thing to read it in books. It's another thing to be in the courtroom, to see the judge, to see the attorneys, to see the parties, etc. So the rubber hits the road with that opportunity. There's also a student law society where students are able to discuss legal issues, put forth requests to the department for development of activities, that sort of thing. Sometimes students have participated in negotiation competitions. Ian Johnson has coached those in recent years. It's a lot of work, but if you like to do challenging work and you want to develop your skills, that's one of the best things you could do, to participate in a legal competition. And then, of course, every student is assigned at the beginning of first year a dedicated personal tutor. So that would be one of the lecturers. And that's the person who teaches the students first year tutorials, the legal methods tutorials, right? So the idea is there's an academic point of reference for the process of entry into the university. All right, so how are we different from some of the other law programs that are available here in England? Well, probably one of the best arguments for this type of institution is the size. We tend to have smaller classes. You will never have a class on this campus with 200 people sitting in a room at the same time. And that's whether or not we're having a pandemic. It's just we do not have classes that large in law. So typical first year class might be 50 or 60 students. The seminars are, of course, smaller. The tutorials are much smaller. And then this way, you as students have more access to the lectures. We get to know your names, unless you hide from us, and we have a sense of where you are. So it's a much more intimate, engaged type of a learning environment. As I mentioned before, we mix up the assessments. So we don't overly focus on exams. We recognize exams have some value, but we also want to make sure students can write outside of exams and can do some other things. So we try and get the balance right. Also, as I mentioned earlier, everyone writes a third-year dissertation or sometimes a research project for BA students. That means there's an opportunity to research on a topic of law that you want, to write it up, to get feedback from the lecturer who's supervising the project, and really turn in what at least theoretically could be your best undergraduate work. So we feel that there is something to offer. And of course, the colleagues are all excellent in the classroom. Any questions, feel free to email the humanities email address. We are within the School of the Humanities. Over the last academic year, that's been a change that has been made. Law is in with literature, politics and history, theology, etc. in the humanities school. All right, Dr. Lang, do you have anything that you might want to add that I didn't cover?
No, you were, as always, comprehensive, but perhaps there are questions and other topics that will come up.
All right, so I'm just going to put this aside. Let's see, can you all see me again? Won't help. That didn't work. Okay, I'm told my screen sharing has been paused. So I'm hoping that that will go away and you will be able to see me and Dr. Lang. Would anyone like to ask any questions? I'm informed that there are several of you out there. Anything about the program, about the campus, anything about where we are with COVID-19, etc. Please ask away and we'll do our best to answer.
I would just like to say that everything Carlos said was really helpful because the university really enables you to make sure that you're the best at your discipline. So make sure to ask those questions.
We are all here and waiting for your questions. We have two lecturers.
So we have one question.
Go ahead.
What steps would be needed to take to become a property lawyer?
Okay, shall we turn to someone who's domestically licensed for that?
I think you mean me.
Dr. Lang.
Well, that is a very, very good question. Now, it depends what you mean. There's all kinds of property. You could become a high street solicitor and you could be doing what we call conveyancing all day long. That's buying and selling houses. Or you could go into the city, into London, although as I understand it, the big firms now, many of them have a presence here in Liverpool and in Manchester. And those guys are dealing in huge transactions, huge properties, huge spaces. Sky's the limit, really. Maybe they're dealing with space and all kinds of things. There's all manner of land being exchanged. So I don't know what your scale is, but I think the process for whichever is going to be the same. You need to get through your law degree, and you need to do well with that. And if you're joining us in 2021, it's an exciting time because there's a new exam coming on stream, and for a solicitor, and that will involve a lot of multiple choice questions that will mix up all of the knowledge that we've given you. Okay, so we'll give you all the knowledge that you need. Then you'll have to get very good at answering multiple choice questions. Perhaps Carlo can say something about that because I think that's the US model, I think. And you'll also have to do some skills. So if you've done the competitions with us, if you've done negotiation with Ian, if you've done, for example, client interviewing with me, then that will help you because there's some skills tests as well. And if you get through all of that, you'll have your practicing certificate. And as long as a firm is willing to give you a job, which I'm sure they will, and you've done some training with them, then you can start your work and look forward to your first big transaction. But when you start out, they might get you to draw the little red line round the property. As in my day, that didn't photocopy very well, so everyone had to go through, if they were a junior paralegal, perhaps Carlo did this as well, and to draw the red line around the property. If you draw it wrong, you include next door neighbors. So I don't know how many transactions I ruined with my bad red pen skills. But anyway, that's just little anecdote. I should think the red pen now is been superseded by the color printer.
Well, we have a few questions coming in, and we'll get to those just momentarily. There was a point about the multiple choice questions on the solicitor's qualifying exam that was inserted here. The exam is scheduled to start in 2021, but if you start your undergraduate studies before then you get grandparented in. And there is some thinking it may be a little bit easier to go ahead and take the traditional route, which we just heard, the degree, the law practice course, and then the training contract, rather than doing the multiple choice questions. It is anticipated that the two exams, including the multiple choice first exam for the SQE, the solicitor's qualifying exam, may be particularly tricky. So now could be a good time, depending on that. And I suppose that's open for argument. I see we have another question here where we're asked if we could speak about the job opportunities after graduating from Hope University. I'm assuming that would be more specific to law, although obviously there are other fields. Now, law as an individual unit offering a full qualifying law degree, the LLB, Bachelor of Laws degree, only opened in 2014. That was 3 years before I arrived. I arrived in 2017. So the students who graduated in 2017, the first class, would then have to go ahead and go through their law practice course and do their training contracts. So we are right now at a point where they would be getting ready to move into practicing, say, as solicitors. Thus, it's a little bit hard to say right now. In a couple of years, I think we'd be able to answer that better, but because we are a newer program, there's several steps students have to go through, and we're not quite at the end of that cycle. We have an additional question here. Dr. Lang, do you want to do the next one? Are you able to see that?
Do you have connections with law firms?
Yes, I have that too.
In regards to law. Well, taking the second part first, I am setting one up. So I hope the inaugural, it's been a little bit spoilt by COVID, but I'm hoping the inaugural law fair, Hope Law Fair, will take place as soon as we're back up and running, which I'm sure will be during this academic year, if not definitely the following one when you come. And yes, we all have some connections because we've all been around in practice, and as well as sitting on the EU committee of the National Law Society, I'm also the rep for Hope on the Liverpool Law Society, and they're terribly friendly. Loads of firms there, and I'm sure that they would all be willing to help out students if we ask them, and get involved. And the best of all is Maxwell Hodge, which is a local firm who have helped us to set up, really they spearheaded a law clinic for us, so you can work with them on live cases, family law cases. So I think it's definite yes in terms of whether we have connections. Hope that answers the question.
We also have Ian
Come
Johnson.
back to us if it doesn't, come back.
I was just going to add to what we just heard. Ian Johnson practiced law in Liverpool. He's a retired barrister, as I mentioned, so he will know some people locally as well in that sense. So we do have some colleagues. I have some connections, but they're in the United States because I practice law there.
Mine are in Brussels.
What's that?
Mine are in Brussels, even worse.
Well, it depends on your angle. Now we have a question here. Let's see. about how supportive the academics at the university are. Well, we have a student present, so we asked the student about that.
Hi, yeah. I found, like, I've just finished my first year at university, and I've been studying psychology. But I have approached many different professors, because one of my flatmates is studying literature, and I have another friend doing creative writing and psychology. And I have found and the professors that are here right now, and I have found all of the professors really encouraging, and really, they love that they're doing their job. Like, they enjoy the job that they're doing, and they want to make sure that their students are set up to do their best in the future. So that's why they have drop-in times, and the way Hope is structured, to have tutorials, to have one-on-ones with your tutorial teachers is so useful. And it encourages you to take in what you're learning, and if you're struggling with anything, don't be afraid to ask them questions, and they really are welcoming in that sense. And so I do think that they are very supportive and love their job. Thank you.
All right, are there other questions? Got a stream of questions coming here. Any additional questions someone might like to send to us?
I think I would like to add, the school, as well as within your own subject, when you're looking for job opportunities outside of school, there are always job career fairs that come to the school throughout the year, and offer opportunities of volunteering. And Hope offers this thing called Service and Leadership Award, where if you take part in that, all you have to do is do some volunteering and do some take part in some workshops, then it builds up and is really useful for your CV in the future. And so it really makes sure that your CV is well-rounded, as well as the subject that you're currently doing. So, and there's also availability to do the Duke of Edinburgh Award. So there's a lot of opportunities within the school to expand on what you're learning.
Absolutely, yes. I agree. The SALA program is very very worthwhile. And if you do some research with some of us, that might even, some of the law professors, that might even count towards your volunteering. But that's not compulsory. As we're wrapping up, but of course you can still ask more questions. My email, I don't know if you can see my name, but my surname's fairly easy. It's Lang, L-A-N-G. And so what you do is you then add R to the end of that for my first initial, which is Richard. So L-A-N-G-R, and then it's at hope.ac.uk. At hope.ac.uk. So that's for me. I don't know if
let me just do mine as well. So
go ahead.
It's easy if you have a last name of 6 letters or fewer. The university takes the first 6 letters of your last name, cuts off everything else, and then adds the first initial. So my last name is Pedrioli. So you get P-E-D-R-I-O, then get rid of everything else, and then add C. It becomes Pedrioc, a new word, a hope word, at hope.ac.uk.
I've put it into the chat so that all attendees and panelists can see.
Giandri, could you, I don't think it's Pedrioli C, I think it's Pedro C.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
So it'd be P-E-D-R-I-O, get rid of everything else, add the first initial C, Pedrioc, new word again, at hope.ac.uk. It's a little strange until you figure it out, and then you just work with the system. All right,
there another-
last opportunity for any questions right now.
There's another one.
Email us later.
Oh. The last question is, we are all hearing that studying law is very stressful. How stressful is it so far from your experiences, and for the professors, on how much of a challenge do you give your students? So
is it stressful to study law? Well, if you're doing it with full engagement, yes, because it's challenging. There's a lot to read. There's a lot to think through. There's a development, there's a learning curve, both in terms of content, but also in the thinking process. So lawyers are particularly sharp with argumentation, which while it goes across different fields, tends to have less emphasis in some fields. So that kind of engagement can be intense.
So personally, I haven't studied law, but I have been studying psychology, and it is a lot of reading. And sometimes you can feel a little bit overwhelmed, but there's so many provisions in place to deal with that overwhelming. There's a drop-in with the counselor at the Student and Wellbeing, and you can talk to your tutors at any time and email them, and they are happy to answer your questions, and also to relieve your stress. So they will reassure you that you're going to do okay during your year at school. And as long as you just stay focused, but take those breaks that you need and ask for the help that you need, and don't let it and don't stay silent about the stress that you're under. The school has so many things that will help you. So studying at university can be quite a big change from whether you're coming out of high school or haven't been studying in a while. But there's a lot of things in place for you to deal with that stress. And after a while, you realize you come to learn to love your subject, all the bad parts and the good parts, because there's always something interesting that you will like and something you won't like. But it's about a well-rounded education.
And the more the students engage, the more of the challenge there is, because they'll find out there are different levels of material and such. So someone may be able to just get by with a surface level engagement, but that's not very impressive for employers. It's not very fulfilling. Once you get in and engage that challenge, then you realize it's more complicated, but that's exciting.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm not sure I'd use the word stress, but certainly the subjects are challenging, and we intend them to be challenging. We go for deep learning. So in terms of the intellectual challenge, we're not going to scrimp on that. We wouldn't be doing our jobs. But what I agree with Jandre is that what we have then is around that, scaffolded around that, is all the support you could possibly want, the drop-ins, the office hours. We're very unusual in that academics, unless they're teaching, are nearly always in their rooms, and you won't get that at other universities. So you can come in our office hours, but more or less if you knock on our door and we're there, we'll see you. And then you've got mindfulness, and if you're living on campus, it's a residential university, so if you're living on campus, you've got that support. Yes, the subject is challenging, but the support network around that is, I would say, really second to none.
Are we able to answer any other questions at this time?
Thank you very much. That was so helpful. Oh, I'm pleased.
Okay. So we are available by email, as are other representatives of the institution.
On the website, you can also go on to UniBuddy if you have more questions for any students at the university. They will pair you up with a student ambassador that can answer further questions.
So if there are no further questions, then we thank you very much for joining us. As we say, feel free to be in touch if there's more information that we can provide. We encourage you to get as much information as you need so that you can make good decisions. Thank you very much for being with us.